Bound in chains of faith and burdened by their sins, the ecclesiastic prisoners march not as soldiers, but as living weapons of the church. With bombs strapped to their backs, their bodies become instruments of divine retribution, each step taking them closer to the enemy and their final act of penance. Stripped of all but the purpose of their sacrifice, they are driven by an unrelenting belief that their destruction will serve the will of God. The ecclesiastic prisoners are the embodiment of a brutal truth. Salvation in Trench Crusade is not earned through prayer, but through pain and blood, paid for in an explosive, fiery end that consumes both sinner and their foes. Hey there, welcome back. Today I've got another Trench Crusade painting video for you, this time continuing with the Trench Pilgrims and the very interesting Ecclesiastic Prisoners. And the first step of the process is to prime the models, and I used Colourforge Matte Black, but any black primer would do here. And then it was time to tackle all of the skin. And for that I used Pro Acryl Dark Warm Flesh, and I just applied multiple coats of this until I got a nice even coverage across all of the skin area, making sure the black primer is no longer visible through the skin tone. And for me that took around 3 or 4 coats. And then after that was applied, I then went in with some Reichland Flesh Shade, mixed in 50-50 with some water just to thin it down a little, and just applied this all over the skin, and then used a damp brush to come into the end and wick up any pooling. And then once that had dried, I then added a little bit of water to the same dark, warm flesh tone and turned it into a glaze and just re-highlighted up all of the upward facing surfaces on all of the skin. I then decided to quickly tackle all of the cloth, and to do that I firstly gave them a quick base coat with Army Painter Deep Grey. Followed by a very quick highlight of Army Painter Uniform Grey on all of the raised areas. Next it was time to paint the large bomb strapped to the model's back, and to do that I'm going to be using the Army Painter Olive Green Triad. Firstly base coating this area with Woodland Camel, and then using Camouflage Green to apply a quick highlight to the entire area. And then coming in with some Necrotic Flesh and just applying a very light dry brush to the top part of the area. I then used some Army Painter Brigadine Brown, applied with a torn up sponge, to apply some chip marks to the bomb. And the key here is just to take a little bit of the paint on the tip of the sponge and then wipe away the majority of it in the same way you would with a dry brush, and then just lightly apply it to all of the edges and areas that you want chips. It was then time to tackle all of the wood and rope that's on the model, and to do that I used the same Army Painter Brigadine Brown just to apply a quick base coat to all of these areas. I then highlighted up all of the wood, firstly with Army Painter Leather Brown, and applying a quick dry brush highlight to these areas. Followed by Paratrooper Tan with an even lighter dry brush, focusing more on the top part of these areas. I then went in with some Army Painter Grey Castle and painted in all of the ropes across the model. Next I went in with some Army Painter Worn Stone, which is just a really nice off-white colour, and applied a cross to the wooden shoulder board. I then went in with the same brown midtone from the previous step and just used a frayed brush to apply a few scratches and chips across the white painted cross. And this should just make it look a little bit more realistic and battle damaged. Next I used some Army Painter Dried Blood to apply the cross-shaped scratches and scars, which are visible across the entire body of the model in the artwork. And unfortunately, these cuts aren't already sculpted into the model, which would have made it much better. And I really wasn't confident going in myself with a scalpel over such a small area and being able to accurately make these markings. So I decided just to go in with some blood effects, knowing that it wasn't going to be quite as good as the artwork, especially with my lack of freehand skills, but I thought I'd give it a try anyway. However, I do think it would have been a lot better if the sculpt did have these little crosses carved into the body. That way I could have just pin dropped some blood effects into them and it would have looked a lot better. And I just used the same blood effect to stipple on some blood to the hands and wrist of the model, before then coming in and applying some shade. And to do that, I'm going to be using Villainy Ink's Goon's Grime, mixed in 50-50 with some white spirits. And I'm just going to use a brush and apply this over the entire model. And I then left that for around 20 minutes to dry. and then came in with some makeup sponges and wiped away all of the excess enamel wash from all of the raised surfaces on the model. And after that had dried, I then used some Dirty Down Rust to apply some heavy rust effects to all of the metallic areas. And unfortunately, I have to embarrassingly confess that I have been using this product wrong for the last 6 months. I didn't realise that you had to shake the bottle like it owed you money before it would actually work. And up until now, I didn't even realise there was a ball bearing mixed in with all the gunk at the bottom of the bottle. And every time I applied it, it acted more like a oily rust effect. And I just thought that was the way the product was designed. However, if you give the product a good shake before use, it's actually a really nice and heavily corroded rust effect. And I just apply this straight out of the bottle to all of the metallic areas, which at the moment are still in the black primer. And then after applying it and waiting around 10 to 20 seconds, the Dirty Down should start to take effect. And after that was applied, I then went back in with the same Goons grime, this time through an airbrush, and just sprayed the bottom part of the legs of both of the models, which is going to help add some dirt and grime to these areas, which is going to make the barefooted nature of these models a little bit more realistic. And after that, I went ahead and based the models, thinking that they were finished. But I had forgot to go back in with a quick dry brush of some Army Painter gun metal to all of the rusted areas. And this is just going to give them a more metallic feel to them. But after that was done, the model was now complete. And as always, I hope you enjoyed and found this tutorial useful. And if you did, don't forget to give it a like. And I'll see you in the next one.